Welcome back, everyone. Just so you know, we have a returning guest today. He's been on with us over at the Comic Watchers, and surprisingly, we're not talking about a crowdfunding project. This is some books he has coming out. So let me bring in Trevor. If you've seen any of the shows or a regular watcher, you probably recognize him. So let me bring him in and let's find out about what he's currently working on.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, good. I think I just scared everybody because they were like, "Oh God, bald guy."
So the last time we chatted was it was over on the Comic Watchers show about Bat Pads.
Mhm.
Um, so tell us a little bit how that is going or wrapped up, or and then we'll get into everything, your other stuff.
Yeah, so Bat Pat's still going strong. Book one came out in October. So thank you again for letting us come on the show and talk about it. We just announced book two is coming out in April of this year. And I know Bill and I are hard at work on additional volumes of Bat Pat. We really like that property. It's a lot of fun, but it's not creator owned. It's an adaptation. So we're taking somebody else's property and story and idea and we're putting it into a graphic novel format, but it is a fun world to play in and fun characters that they let us play with. So I'm always very grateful and very blessed that they do let us do that with that series.
And for somebody that maybe hasn't seen or heard an interview that we've done, tell us a little bit about yourself as a comic reader and as a creator.
Sure. My name is Trevor Mueller. I'm a comic book writer. I work with artists from around the world who make all of my words look pretty. And I started cutting my teeth in comics working on young readers' graphic novels. A self published book I did called Albert the Alien caught the eye of Mark Waid and ended up getting nominated for 2 Harvey Awards when it was on his Thrillbent website many, many years ago. And since that time, started to work on some more teen and older readers kind of oriented works because as my Albert the Alien audience continued to age up, I wanted to make sure that I had stuff for them to continue to read. So I did a couple of Webtoon original series, Repossessed, which wrapped up, I think, a year ago now at this point, and Nexus Point, which is actually wrapping up this year. The episodes have been submitted. We're just waiting for Webtoon to actually put them out there. But then there will be a full 65 episode series of cyberpunk action thriller adventures going on with that one. And then I started dipping my toe into the waters with some self-published horror graphic novels as well. My first foray into mature readers' books. Los Ojos came out 2 years ago now. At this point, that's kind of like John Wick meets John Constantine, a supernatural action story. And then Demon City came out last year in October, and that one's kind of like Bad Boys meets Hellboy, a bit of a post-apocalyptic buddy cop story. And what was really, really fun working with my editor, Adam Molenta, over at Papercutz, was the opportunity to go back to children's comics. I subscribe to a very popular song written by Linda Kaplan Thayer as a bit of a life mantra. And it goes a little something like, I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. Uh, and so any opportunity that I get to be able to play in the sandbox of the imagination and for younger readers is always a joy for me. And Adam has given me more and more of those opportunities coming out with additional Papercutz titles as well, which I'm excited to talk about as too.
Yeah, and the books we're going to be talking about are a little something different. Not really a straightforward story type thing, but why don't you kind of tell us about them?
Yeah, so Papercutz has launched not just a brand new title, but a brand new line of comic books that they are doing. They are licensed characters. They're characters that they own and kind of created, but they really gave writers like me and artists that I've worked with on these 2 books the opportunity to play within this world in the sandbox again. And the title is called The Secret S.T.E.A.M Society. It's a bit of a magic school bus inspired story where it's part adventure series for young readers with a little bit of educational content mixed in so that readers are learning something about a particular topic as they read the adventure. And I had the privilege of working on the very first book in the series, which just came out in February, which is called Horses. And I'll let you have 2 guesses as to what that book is about. But it's inspired by the fact that my youngest daughter's favorite animal is horses. So we got to do that one. And it was only coincidence that it came out in the year of the horse. So that was pretty neat as well. And then the other book.
Marketing,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
marketing.
Oh, yeah. And then the other book that they let me work on was Secret Steam Society Music. And so the music book is coming out in April. And I believe that there's another Secret Steam Society book coming out from a different writer in between those, which is about outer space. So there are more books in that series yet to come that they have not yet announced. But you can get a copy of Horses right now at your local comic book store, library, or you can pre-order copies of Space and Music, and let them know that you like what we're doing with this thing, because it's a lot of fun to work on.
So let's, let's talk about the books. Tell us, I'm sure if you know there's an adult watching, they know what STEAM is, but for say someone who doesn't, explain what STEAM is.
Yeah, so STEAM is an acronym. It stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. And so the idea is to explore those topics within the context of the theme of the story. So in the instance of horses, for example, we talk about the evolution of horses. We talk about the relationship of horses and their cultural impact around the world, how they help to advance humankind through our ability to pack more stuff on their back and carry it over long distances, to expand our societies beyond just a limited geographical location. But then also from a mathematics perspective, horsepower and the equation of that and the origin of that, and where did that come from? How do horses exist within our ecosystem, within the world, and how does that contribute to the overall ecological cycle of the planet? And what I'm making it sound like right now is really, really boring, but that's not actually what the book is, because the intention, number one, for this book is to have fun and to make sure that the readers are having fun. So whenever we're doing something like that, whenever we're exploring like the evolution of horses, it's not a lecture. The kids have an alien student in their midst who gives them advanced technology that allows them to do things like go back in time or teleport into deep space or shrink down to the size of an atom, so that they can explore different elements of the topics that they are learning about. And that allows us to tell a really fun adventure that can happen within little microcosms of the story. So there are parts of the horses story, for example, where they go back in time to learn about the evolution of horses and an adventure occurs, or they end up shrinking down really small and going inside the body of a horse to learn about the biology of it. And then, something ends up going wrong and their ship gets damaged and they've got to get out. And so it's really, really fun to kind of play in this world while, yes, we're exploring the truth of the planet that we live in, and the facts and pieces of this animal, but simultaneously doing so in a format that is accessible to young readers, that's fun to read. And selfishly, as a writer who knew very little about horses, it was an opportunity for me to kind of get paid to learn about something that my daughter really, really cares about. And the approach that I took to populating the book was, what were fun facts that I didn't know about horses that I could easily bring up in casual conversation, and it would make me sound smarter than I probably am. And that was really, really fun. And so a lot of the reviews that we got for the book early on were people saying, I didn't know that, or that's not something that I ever thought about when it came to horses. And to me, that was kind of the point. That was the thing that I thought really kind of jumped out as to how we were approaching this topic, whereas other educational graphic novels tend to focus a little bit more on the lecture or the exposition of what's going on. We really wanted to focus on the adventure and then pepper in these memorable kind of facts that you'll learn about the subject. So in this case, horses.
Now, are the characters are the same across all the books?
There's a big cast of characters that Adam Walenta and the people over at Papercutz created. And within the stories that I write, I typically focus on maybe 2 or 3 of them at a time. So there's maybe a cast of a dozen or so kids. Each of them go to this prestigious institute over in Connecticut that essentially is the smartest kids from around the planet. And only a small portion of those student bodies know that there's an alien student among them and have access to his technology to go on these types of adventures. Hence the title Secret S.T.E.A.M Society. And so this first book that we did with horses was about three characters. So George is an outdoorsman. He's kind of an adventurous student. He likes horses and he knows a lot about them. And Thea is in his study group as they're learning about horses, and she's never ridden a horse before, and they're a little scary for her. They're large, they're intimidating, they have a mind of their own, and it's only through the act of learning more and more about the horses that she starts to become comfortable with them and overcomes her fear and anxiety about riding one. The third character that we have in there is the alien character whose name is Toot. And Toot is from another planet. He has kind of these flute-like horns on his head that can make these kind of windpipe sounds every now and then. And again, he's got access to the advanced technology. So he's a bit of like a slapstick comedy insert at times throughout the story, but also knows a lot about particular elements of the topics. So each of the kids get an opportunity to kind of be in the adventure, start the adventure, be part of kind of the inciting incident, and or help come up with a solution for what they're trying to do, which usually involves their smarts and their knowledge.
Now, when you're writing the story and, peppering in this information, is it a different, was it a challenge for you to, I guess, adapt your writing to doing that?
Yes and no. It's very different to write a children's graphic novel to begin with, but to write one that's fun and has educational content in it is also a unique challenge. And the other thing too, I think, is Adam Molenta and I, because we were writing the first one, which was the horse book, we're trying to figure out what was the right balance between adventure and educational content. What type of topics did we want to cover within the length of the book? How much drama or adventure could we potentially put in there? Like, do we want the characters to be in true danger, or do we want it to focus more on kind of the fun of the adventure that they're going on? And I would say as we went along and we started to kind of get our sense of how we wanted these stories to be and the tone and the structure and the pacing of them, they became a lot easier. And then it just became striking that balance between how do we make the educational elements and the thematic elements of the story coalesce so that it felt like a cohesive piece. And again, not that lecture kind of structure that would be very easy to fall into. And so I put together kind of an outline for him that was like, here are the topics that I think are kind of interesting and the way that these would thematically line up to the story. I have a very healthy relationship with my library. And so we went over there and checked out gigantic stacks of books about horses. And then, of course, online research as well. So I maintained a very thick bibliography when it came to the actual documentation of the scripting process. And then we went through a two-step process for the script itself. So one was like the story editorial. So that's where Adam was coming in to make sure that the characters were properly represented, that they did not change their tone of voice or their attitude or their motivations throughout the story. And then the other one was the academic portion. So they brought in actual equestrian experts to come in and make sure that what we put into the book is actually factual, up to date, and the most accurate information possible. Because heaven forbid I check out a book from the library that's 10 years old and new science has come out about the topic that we're researching. This gave us an opportunity to go back in and just refresh and make sure that whatever is in there is the latest and greatest information possible. So it was a very collaborative process. It was one that I really enjoyed doing because, again, I got paid money to learn about horses. And then I've since that book's come out already, I've gotten the opportunity to read that book to my daughter, who is a huge equestrian fanatic, and she just ate up every single page of it. So for anyone out there who absolutely loves horses, or they've got a kid that was always like, I want a pony, this is the book that actually might scratch that itch until they get a chance to actually go out and buy him something.
So what's the most interesting horse fact that you learned?
The first fact that I think I learned was quite an interesting one. They measure horses' height in terms of hands, hand height. And so the number of hands that they are from kind of their flanks down to their feet determines the actual size of the horse. And then yes, there are breeds of pony and there are breeds of horses, but there are also the size considerations when it comes to differentiating between those two types of animals. And I thought that that was a really interesting fact. And it's one of the early facts that we put into the book as well, as to what's the difference between a pony and a horse, how are they measured, and what does a hand translate to, because my hand might be bigger than somebody else's hand than somebody else's. But it's become a common unit of measure, similar to a foot is 12 inches, right? Like a hand is
Mhm.
X number of inches as well. And I thought that that was really, really fun in there too. The other piece that I thought was interesting as well, when we were going into the ecology portion of the story and we start to talk about horses' impact on the environment, was that some people use horse manure in order to kind of create superior fertilizers. And then there are very premium brands of manure tea, not to be confused with the kind of tea you would drink, but for home gardening and those types of things. And some of them get very, very expensive and very, very elaborate, which I was quite impressed to hear, because that was not a world that I was ever aware of prior to researching the book, where somebody would go out and buy. I mean, some of these are really, really fancy bottles, and they're costing a pretty penny when it came down to the size portion that you would end up getting of them. But again, they're for very specific kind of home gardening purposes, for people who, unlike me, have a green thumb and don't kill something immediately when they try to take care of it.
I look at plants and they just, you know,
The one behind you looks healthy.
because my wife takes care of it.
Fair.
I'm not I'm not allowed to touch it. So tell us, who's the artist that you're working with on this book, and is it the same one that you're working with on the other books?
Yeah, no, it's two different artists that I've got on each of those. Hold on one second, because I actually have a copy of Secret Steam Society that I can grab. So the artist for this one is Moriega. And the thing that really caught the editor's eye when it came to his artwork was his ability to actually draw the horses. We wanted realistic renderings of the horses and the characters that were in there, because accuracy and authenticity was really important to us when it came to how they were depicted within the pages. Yes, we have some cartoony moments in there where we have personifications of horses, where they're standing on two legs and dressed in a suit and a tie. But where this artist really, really nailed it was in the actual renderings and depictions of the horses as they are seen by our eye in our world today. And then the artist that we had for the music book was Christian Colbert, and Christian just crushed it on this one. We had a very different set of criteria for what we wanted to do with that book. There are no horses in the music book, so we didn't need somebody that can do really good renderings of those, but somebody who could do instruments and somebody who could do musicians throughout history, because we do talk about the evolution of music and how certain artists have inspired and certain genres of music have inspired other ones, and how that's kind of evolved and spread throughout the world, and the way that music can kind of bring us all together. And we do have a lot of focus on American artists in there, from musicians, just because of it's an American published book, but we can't overlook the cultural impact and how music has spread throughout the world, with certain genres. And even today, we're seeing that with the blow up of K-pop around the world, right? Like you've got BTS is like the new Beatles, and they're everywhere when it comes to that. So very, very different artists, very, very different set of criteria, but both of them are just absolutely crushing it when it came to the books that we were putting together. And some of the future ones that we have coming out as well will have different artists too. And then the space book, which I did not write, has my Batpat artist on there, Bill Walko. So Bill's also lending his talents to the Secret Steam Society series as well.
I was just kind of thinking, I mean, was there a difference between writing, the first one about horses and then, you know, the one about music? Because, horses is a very kind of, I don't want to say drilled down subject, but music is more amorphous, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. And it actually came to me at a really interesting time. So again, I was still getting into my groove on horses when I got a text message from the editor. And at the time, I'd just gotten downsized from my day job and had just kind of made the commitment to decide to go comic book writing full time. But I was still a little tender from having gotten let go, if you will. And so I got this anonymous text message from the editor that was just like, call me when you get this. It's important. And I was like, oh, snap. I'm getting fired. Like the whole line is canceled. I haven't even finished page 30 yet, and it's all going to be over. And so I call him up. I'm like, hey, man, how's it going? He's like, I really like working with you. And I was like, oh, crap, I am getting fired. And I'm like, I really like working with you, too. And he's like, but we had somebody else that was not working out on this next book, and how would you like to immediately move on from horses to another subject? And I was like, oh, thank God, I'm not getting fired. And then the second thought was, what's the subject? And he's like, music. Wonderful. I listen to music all the time. I know nothing about it. Let's do it. And so we jumped in on that one. And for me, again, it was trying to center the story around the characters first and foremost, and come up with a fun story and a fun arc for them to go on, something where they benefit from or can overcome an obstacle through the education and the learning that they're having. And so, having grown up at a time where a lot of my friends had a lot more musical talent than I did, they were all in bands. And so I had the kids form a band, and they were going to perform in the or the fall festival where their parents are coming to the school. And so it's an opportunity for them to really show off their musical talents. But one of them ends up coming down with laryngitis and can't sing. And so they find through the course of a day or two another student in there who has a really good singing voice, but knows absolutely nothing about music or bands or how to harmonize or any of the elements that go into actual performance. And that became the catalyst for them to overcome this conflict and help inform this character. How does a band function, and how did a band even get started, and what are bands, and what are acoustics and sound and all these things. And so for me, it started with the basics of music, which was sound and sound vibration. And then it started to move into, well, what's the difference between sound for music and sound that's just a jackhammer outside, right? Noise versus music. And what were those differences? And as I continued to research more and more around the different instruments that were out there, the different types of composers, the different ways that music has evolved over time and inspired cultural movements and all this stuff, the story just really started to fall together. And the only requirement the editor really had on there was that he wanted to see how instruments got manufactured. So we did have an adventure of the kids going down and through manufacturing facilities to learn how drums are made or guitars or some of those. And I wanted to make sure that we kind of covered off on not just what the common types of instruments are that are out there, but some of the uncommon ones as well that people might not have heard of, where there are instruments where you can play water, or you can play windpipes, or how do bagpipes work, and those types of things. And so we do go through those types of details within the story, which again, the kids get to have a fun little adventure zipping through all the wind within a bagpipe as they're shrunk down and going in and getting spat out again throughout the pipe. So long answer to a short question. It was a very different process, but I think because I was already in that groove from horses, I already kind of had this mindset of like research, pitch, story, and write and flow. And it was really just as soon as I nailed what that conflict was, the rest of it just started to come together.
So let's say that Adam comes to you and says, you can pick any topic that you want to that you want to write. Do you have, well, where are you going if you want to?
So he did that. and I wrote it, and they haven't announced it yet. So I don't think I'm allowed to say what the topic is. I will say that I'm super excited about that topic. I will say that he's having some issues trying to find an artist that can properly depict it. So for anyone out there who is a talented artist who's looking for a challenge and an educational topic to do an adventure on, contact Adam and let him know. But I will say it is a, without trying to break or violate my NDA, it is a topic that impacts all of our lives every day. It is a topic that has changed the way that we interact with each other and our world. And it is a topic that we cannot imagine life without it at this time. And that's all I can say about
I,
it.
I have a guess, and after we're done, I'll tell you what I think it is, and you can either tell me I'm way off or so. Is there a certain character that you've kind of grown attached to in the society that, as you've been writing their adventures?
Yeah, I think each character has a really fun and unique story. Um, in the music story, we focus on a character named Sebastian, who's the one who has the voice of an angel, but not the skills to use it properly. And there's him and a girl named Stella who's in a wheelchair. And Stella really likes movie soundtracks. And I'm a huge movie soundtrack nerd. And when you ask me about like my favorite composers, we're talking like Hans Zimmer, we're talking about James Horner, we're talking about James Newton Howard, like those types of composers that were out there. And so I really, really connected with that character when I was writing that story. And I think each story that I do, there's always like a character that I really connect to very strongly. The one that I was talking about earlier, or hinting at earlier, that I could not talk about what the topic was one of the newer characters that got added into the Bible after I'd already started working on the horses book. He was not a character that was available when I started working on that one. His name is Kedzi, and so he's part Japanese character, and he's really into technology and the environment and all those pieces. And so when I was writing that particular story, his journey became really, really interesting to me and something that I really wanted to explore through the lens of the topic that we were trying to do with that particular tale. Being so far away from home and trying to kind of connect to your places of origin when you're not physically able to be there, and the exploration of that isolation feeling, I thought was something that was really, really interesting to kind of do. And because I'm a stickler for alien characters as well, Toot has a special place in my heart. I keep telling Adam that there's a lot of parallels there between Albert the alien, and I always want to make sure that we don't go too close to those two characters being the same. But Toot as a character was really, really fun, and they had written in the character Bible an origin story for Toot, like how he kind of came to be on Earth and meet these kids. And to me, that one really resonated within the music story. And I was like, can we tell his origin story from the character Bible so people can actually see that come to life? And I got permission to do it. And so to me, that was like a special moment where I get to play with these characters. I get to use the information that I have on the back end that people don't normally get to see. And I got to reveal behind the curtain a bit what's going on with some of these characters and their origins and stuff. Because the books are set up like an animated series, right? Like at the end, everything kind of resets back to zero. So that way, if there's a different writer that comes in, there's no canon, there's no backstory that has to get picked up on. You can read the books in any particular order. That's why they're not numbered. Horses is not number one in the series. It just so happens to be the first book that we made. And so I think that that's been both a blessing and a curse when it comes to how we're kind of trying to do the stories, since I've had the ability to work on several of them. And every now and then you're like, oh, but I want to pick up that thread that I dropped in that last book. And editorial's like, no, it's a cartoon, man. Like think animated series from Saturday morning. And so that's again been good, I think, to kind of help level set me and keep some of those larger ambitions in check a bit. So that you don't go off the rails and accidentally end up creating a new Crisis on Infinite Earth Steam edition.
So, and I know as a writer that you're very flexible, but is there perhaps a topic that if it was pitched to you, you would just have to say, I don't know enough about that. I don't know if I can learn about.
Yeah, there's a few that have come my way where sometimes I came into the process late, like a writer fell through or something like that, and I didn't have an immediate take on it. And so sometimes I had the blessing of being able to think about it, and there's one or two of them where that luxury did not exist, and I had to figure out quite quickly what is this story on this particular topic. And I can probably talk about this one because if you look up Secret S.T.E.A.M Society, even though they haven't announced the book formally, like it's on Goodreads and it's on Amazon, even though there's no cover art or anything for it just yet. But the topic was water, and so water kind of came to me very late in the process, and I was like, I drink water all the time. I'm drinking water right now out of this green cup, and I like water. And it wasn't until I started to research water that I was like, wait a minute, there's an interesting twist here on water that I've never seen done before, and that is, where did water come from? What is the origins of water? And as soon as I kind of got my head wrapped around that part of the story, the rest of it really started to click into place. Because the water story feels like it should be a terrestrial one, but it's not. It's an extraterrestrial one. And again, how does extraterrestrial character play into that particular tale and all that? So I thought that that was kind of a fun and interesting twist, and again, something I hadn't seen before done. And they're working on that book right now. I've started to see some of the roughs for it, and it's going to be gorgeous. Each of these books is just gorgeous. So
No, with the samples or the PDFs you send me, they're really, they look nice. They read easy, and I probably learned something. So
something that you can take to your next cocktail party and be like, hey,
yeah,
did you know that you measure a horse with hands?
well, horsepower in cars. But so
Back when the steam engine was being invented.
so is there anything else about the series that maybe we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that people know about?
I will say, unlike Bat Pat, where again, Bat Pat's an adaptation. I didn't even necessarily write those stories. I turned them into a graphic novel. These are characters that I didn't necessarily create, but with stories that I did get to write my own self. And I've been trying to kind of pay homage a little bit in the background to some of the people in my life that were important to me, since this topic was important to my daughter. And I've done that through like naming some of the horses in the story. I've had a couple of friends of mine who have been huge supporters of my comic book career who unfortunately passed away much too young. And so as a way to kind of pay homage to them and to honor the support and legacy that they'd kind of given to me, I kind of snuck this in there past editorial. So if they're finding out about this right now for the first time, it's already printed. Too late, suckers. But the horses are all named after friends of mine who had all passed away. And so George, one of the lead characters in the book, who's this character right here, his horse named Lee is named after my friend Gyu, and Gyu used to be the guest relations head over at Anime Central and was a good friend of mine. And was a huge supporter of all the comic work that I did. He would sponsor the appearance packages within my Albert the Alien Kickstarters all the time. So he has appeared in the Albert the Alien books before. And I thought it fitting to have him come back again, this time in the spirit animal of a horse, and have another adventure in kids' books that I was working on. And then another one too, a good friend of mine, Kim. Kim actually grew up on a horse farm. And so she kind of introduced me to the equestrian lifestyle back when I was still in college. I mean, her and I worked at Best Buy together, and she was like just a huge Sailor Moon nerd. And, we immediately hit it off as good people. And she had married a guy named Levi. And so in the story, at one point, we do talk about how the attachment between horses and humans and the spirituality of that connection in many cultures have them buried together. And so we have a moment in the story where we say, here is Levi and his horse Kim, again, to kind of pay homage to my friend Kim, who unfortunately passed us by. So there are like little Easter eggs like that maybe every now and then I will release and let people know, but I also don't necessarily want editorial to know all my tricks in case I want to pepper some more in there as the series progresses. But to me, that was one that made this really, really special, was an opportunity to let my friends who are no longer with us have another adventure again in comic book form.
Well, since when we were talking about music, you said you were a soundtrack person, and usually on our other show, we've started doing top five. So give me your top five soundtracks.
Ooh. All right, I'm going to have to go with Serenity, The Bone Collector, Road to Perdition, and Aliens. Is
Hmm,
that four? Or is that five?
four.
Four. We're also going to go with Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
It's an iconic soundtrack, and anytime I need to get pumped up, I will put that on. The drum beats alone, they just they start to get you going.
Hmm.
What are your top five? I'm curious.
Oh. Um, I really like the Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
I mean, I can, I've fallen asleep to that many times and had some pretty weird dreams, Um,
Sure.
let's see. So, I wish wish I had thought about this, but Star Wars. I like anything that John Williams does is pretty solid.
Iconic
Um,
soundtracks from John Williams.
yeah.
Danny Elfman too. Danny Elfman's an amazing
Mm.
composer, and anytime he's
Oh
worked
yeah.
with Tim Burton, it's been musical magic.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
I not to go too deep down um, the music topic, but to give you a little bit more time to think about the other two soundtracks that you may have. My daughter for Christmas ended up getting an old Victrola record player, single speaker, and she's mostly into like Taylor Swift and stuff. But we were downtown doing a staycation in downtown Chicago over the weekend, and we found an old record store. And I went in there, and they had an original pressing of the Japanese only audio version of Princess Mononoke. And it was like $50. And I was very tempted to buy it because I love that soundtrack. I thought that soundtrack was amazing. And to be able to hear it on vinyl, I think would be a real treat.
Well, I don't know. It's definitely. I don't say it's one of in my top five, but my first CD years ago was a movie soundtrack, which I went off the radio. It was the Robin Hood Men and Thieves soundtrack.
Okay, Prince of Thieves. Yep, it's a great one.
Yeah. So that was my first CD ever, and now they're all sitting in the storage unit.
Well, I still have my CDs, and every now and then my kids and I will go into the basement where we don't have anything that streams audio or video down in the basement. So we have to play old CDs. And if we go down there to like play darts or pool or board games or something, we'll usually pull out like an old CD. And while we did not pull this out while my children were downstairs, we did pass through it. And I found the original Crow soundtrack. And I remember having conversations with James O'Barr. Oh, goodness, this was probably 7 years ago or something, where he was kind of talking about the next Crow movie that they were going to make at the time. I think they had cast Jason Momoa for it, and they just like passed on Bradley Cooper as the role. But he was talking about the trying to get the studios to approve the soundtrack for that movie, and they got a lot of pushback because they were like, hey, we might be able to sell, a couple hundred copies of this because you've got the Cure on here, but who the hell is Nine Inch Nails? Like, what? We're never going to be able to sell that. And then his remark was like, and once the album went triple platinum, now they come back up to me and they're like, hey, we're making a new Crow movie, so what kind of music are you listening to these days?
And, if I had to pick one more, okay, two more. Last of the Mohicans is really good.
Yes, Trevor Jones, amazing
Um,
soundtrack.
Now that I'm thinking about it, like the Chronicles of Narnia soundtracks were also pretty solid.
Yes, I don't remember who the composer of that one was. We're about to
Uh,
show that one to my kids.
yeah, I can't remember. I should know this because one of my Pandora stations that I populated, kind of pulls a lot of those songs. But I think if you're looking for like a soundtrack with, like rock songs and stuff like that, I'd have to go with Train Spotting.
Mm, yeah, that's a
So,
good one too. There's a band that does movie trailer music that I really like called Two Steps from Hell. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to give them a listen or not, but I find a lot of inspiration listening to them. And as soon as you start listening to one of their albums, you'll be like, wait a minute, that was in that video game trailer, or that was in like the Star Trek trailer, or Star Wars just used that one. And it's so interesting just to see how iconic their music has become, and yet how like subtle and background it has become, because you don't realize just how impactful it is until you recognize that it's from them. So if you get a chance, Two Steps from Hell is an amazing movie trailer band.
and you talk about like recognizing music, from across even like TV shows. Um, my son is into the Loud House, so I'm just sitting there doing working on my computer while he's watching us. Like that's the music from Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, nice. We're a big Bluey family over here.
Mm.
And the last episode that they made in season 3, The Sign, has a silent moment in it while they're playing a song called Lazarus Drug. And it's probably a 7 or 9 minute song. And my Spotify, weekly discovery had just like picked it out at random. And I was listening to the song. I was like, oh, this song sounds familiar. And then it got to like that moment from the TV show. And I was like, wait a minute, I know what song this is. And immediately started to tear up because that episode is emotional in all the right ways. And that show has no right to be as well written as it is. I can only hope that one day something that I write resonates as much as Bluey has resonated in our household.
So like, talking about music, do you when you read comics, do you listen to music, or when you're writing, do you listen to music to kind of inspire you? And if so, what?
I do. It's always different, actually. So, one of the first steps that I do when I'm starting a new project is I put a playlist together. Uh, Usually, I'll have an idea of like 3 to 5 songs, and then just over the course of the project, I will add to it. But it's music that inspires a scene, a character, or a tone, like a thematic tone that I want throughout the entire series. And so, like, I'll give you an example. There was a song that I had heard. I'm gonna see if I can look it up real quick because now I'm blanking on it. Blanking on the name of the song, but I have it in my Spotify. But when I was coming up with Demon City, and I knew that I wanted kind of this post-apocalyptic buddy cop type story, and but I didn't necessarily have like a particular song that would resonate on it. And there was a band that I had found, and of course, it's called Hell or High Water by The Rescues. And as I listened to that song over and over again, kind of on repeat, I was like, this is checking some kind of box in my head. This is inspiring something happening in this story. And to me, I can't write Demon City unless I'm listening to that song at some point in the journey. Nexus Point was inspired very heavily by a lot of music. In fact, the episodes are all named after songs. Same with Repossessed, my 2 webtoon original series. And there were a lot of songs on there by bands like Pucifer, or some techno and songs or synth pop songs by like VNV Nation, Sentinel. Was a big one that really inspired some of the episodes and characters from that series as well. So, long answer to a short question, I always come up with something a little bit different for each project that I'm working on, but there's got to be at least 3 to 5 songs that kind of inspire something in me in order to put them into a playlist. And then again, that playlist can grow as I keep working on it. Drives my wife bonkers when I'm listening to the same 4 songs over and over again on repeat while I'm writing for like hours on end. So I do try to mix it up as best as I possibly can. And I find that if I try to carry a song over from one playlist to another, if I try to listen to it while I work on another project, it doesn't work. I cannot listen to The Rescues and not work on Demon City, and I can't listen to it and work on anything else because it just doesn't. It's not clicking. Like it, nothing flows out. So I find music to be very inspirational in that regard, and something that really helps to kind of keep me going throughout there. But it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and that was one of the things too we wanted to touch on in the music book, was to make sure that we were checking a lot of those boxes, those cultural boxes, those personal boxes, those things that really kind of resonate with people when it comes to their experience with music, be it listening at home, listening on the go, going to a concert, right? These are all very different kind of experiences and ways to experience music, which I've really enjoyed and appreciated. And being able to depict that in comic book form has been a lot of fun. There was a quote in the book. I don't know if you read the back of it, the back of the music book.
If I did, I probably didn't. I don't remember.
I'm trying to find it because it looks like they've reorganized all of my files, but they put a pull quote onto the back of the music book, which to me was like one of the highlight cornerstones of my entire writing career. And now I'm not going to be able to find it, that I'm like mentioning it to you. Hold on, I got to look this up. No, I think they reorganized all my folders. How dare they? Okay. Yeah, I can't find it now. But essentially, it was the pull quote that they had gotten from the academic that was doing all the fact checking that we had within the story. And he's an associate dean of music over at Yale School of Music. And I'll paraphrase the quote. It's on the back cover of the book when it comes out in April, so I'm not spoiling it for anybody. But it was something along the lines of like, this book should be required reading for every administrator, teacher, librarian, parent, or person who has a set of ears that works, because it teaches us and shows us the power of music and how it binds us and brings us all together. And at a time like we experience right now, I can't think of a more powerful message to exist within a children's graphic novel. And it was something akin to that. And again, I was like, damn, like if I never write another comic book again, I have hit the pinnacle of my career and I can die happy. And that's just fine. And so again, very, very flattered to Papercutz for the opportunity to work on these books. And hopefully the stories resonate with those readers out there, be their parents, be their kids, be their educators, and inspire this generation to pursue the type of dreams, career, hobby that they might have related to these books. Again, with the 3 books that are out right now, be they horses, be they space, be they music.
So when you're writing the horses book, you had wild horses on repeat.
Yeah, there was a bit of that going on. I think we were listening to some Black Stallion.
Camptown races.
Camptown races. Some Black Stallion soundtrack in there. Do 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 do. but no, it was fun. We do talk a little bit about horse music in there, and then there's a section in the back that also talks about jobs with horses. And to me, that was important to point out as well, because not every single job related to horses actually involves riding or being around the animal. You can do. I didn't realize there were horse dentists. There are obviously veterinarians. There are people who breed horses. There are people who do a lot of different things related to horses, manage stables, ranch hands, all these things that were really, really interesting. And with music as well, you don't need to have musical talent in order to be able to work in the musical industry. You can be a manager, an agent. You can be somebody who owns a venue or who works at a venue. And so we wanted to have those moments in there as well, where, again, inspiring kids or readers of all ages. If you love a thing, there's probably a career out there that you can pursue for it, regardless of what your background comfort level or skill level may be with a particular thing. I can't sing, I can't play an instrument, but you know what? I understand marketing. I could do music marketing if I so chose. So, or write a comic book about it.
Are you reading anything currently that you're really enjoying?
I am enjoying two things. One of them is not a comic book. I'm really enjoying the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I'm on book 6 in that series, and that thing is checking all kinds of weird boxes for me. Are you familiar with Dungeon Crawler Carl at all? It's a bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Hunger Games, where aliens have basically come to Earth. Everyone who is inside of a building is instantaneously dead, just crushed under the weight of gravity. And then these dungeon portals open up, and humans are encouraged to go inside so that they can participate in these video game style dungeon crawl games for the entertainment of the galaxy. And Carl is outside at 3 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold of Seattle, wearing his Uggs, his heart-shaped boxers, and a leather jacket, trying to get his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, out of a tree when this occurs. And the two of them now have to go into this dungeon and figure out how to survive together. It is dark, it is gritty, it is weird, it is funny. There are 8 books in the series so far and more coming, and I'm really, really enjoying it. The other thing, too, that I'm enjoying. Yeah, please do. They're quite funny. And the other one that I'm reading right now, actually, quite different, but graphic novel wise, is the Way of the House Husband. If you haven't had a chance to read Way of the House Husband, I did not think that I would like this when somebody told me about it. And I went to my library. They had the first 2 volumes. I now own the first 15 volumes. But it's essentially about a former Yakuza hitman who has decided to settle down, and his wife is the breadwinner in the family, and he just does household chores all day long, but he tackles them like they're a job that he would do for the mob. So like he'll go into a local grocery store like he's busting in the place to start a protection racket, and he'll get uncomfortably close to the owner of the place up, and he'll be like, "You got some of that white powder?" And what he's talking about is baking soda because he needs to clean a dish at home. Like, it's just hilarious. I'm really enjoying those types of series at the moment.
Well, as we kind of start to wrap up here, is there anything else that you're working on that you could mention? Not that we have to talk about it, but we can always have you back.
Sure. Well, plenty of things to talk about to come back. I mean, we're doing sequels to Los Ojos and Demon City. So, from a self-published and a crowdfunding perspective, I've got those books coming out, as well as 2 other yet unannounced self-published titles as well. There's going to be more Secret S.T.E.A.M Society books coming out. As they announce them, I'm going to be very excited to talk more about them. More Bat Pat on the way. Again, Volume 2 comes out in April, and that one's going to be called Monster Slumber Party. I think we just finished, oh goodness, I think the 4th or so book in that series that I've been working on. So there's a lot more Bat Pat coming out as well. And then another one that I've just started working on for Papercutz. They haven't announced it yet. But some of the craftier fans out there have kind of mined Amazon and figured out what the next series is that I'm doing there. All I can say is it's an adaptation of a Netflix animated series. And I'm very excited for this one, and I'm very proud of this one. And I think people are really going to enjoy what we put together for that series. So when that one comes announced as well, I will happily talk about it at length.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and are you doing any shows this year?
Yeah, I got C2E2 this weekend. It's my hometown show. So over at Chicago McCormick Place, I'll be at table Z5. I'm going to be returning to Heroes Con as a guest of honor, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. Still working to see whether or not I'll be at Baltimore or New York, but I would like to be at one or both of those shows. And then Fan Expo Chicago as well. I'll be a guest of honor returning to that show too. So a couple shows kind of coming up in the near future. Some of them more towards the end of the year. And then a few other ones that I'm still working on. But I always announce whatever conventions I'm going to on my social media page. Trevor A. Mueller is my name, all one word. Trevor A. Mueller. Find me, follow me, friend me on your social media platform of choice.
Um, I New York Comic Con is where I first met you when you were there with the holding the sign that says "Read my book" or something.
May I tell you about my comics? And I still have that sign. It's a different sign now, but same general concept.
Well, um, definitely have to have you back when either you have that stuff or your crowdfunding stuff is live. And yeah, until then, it's been great catching up with you, and hope you stay safe. And we'll definitely have to be in touch.
I love it. Chad, thank you so much for this, for everything you do, for supporting independent creators like me, whether they are crowdfunding a book or just have a book coming out from a publisher. Again, I think it's so important to have that synergy out there. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Well, over at Comic Watch, we love indie comics, and we love what Mad Cape is doing with all their lines. So it's the least we can do.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, yeah, have a good evening.
You too.